Radio communication suddenly cut off. The Burkina Faso Air Force Command Center recorded the last signal from President Ibrahim Traoré's helicopter. Heavy turbulence, engine failure, making emergency landing, and then only static. The EDI, presidential helicopter, had disappeared in an area marked red on the map, territory controlled by JNIM militants. As rescue teams prepared, no one knew the truth. Ibrahim Traoré had survived, and his fate now lay in the hands of people who had sworn to kill him. Lieutenant Colonel Kabore was looking at the screens in Burkina Faso's Military Intelligence Center, his face etched with deep concern. The latest telemetry data showed the presidential helicopter suddenly losing altitude over dense forest in the Djibo region. This area had seen the most intense fighting since President Traoré came to power. "What does the GPS signal say?" asked Kabore, trying to control his tone. The technical specialist wiped his sweat-gleaming forehead. "Last coordinates show here, sir." A red dot appeared on the screen, exactly 12 kilometers east of JNIM's main camp. "Damn it," muttered Kabore. Then, "The president's bodyguards? Any word from them?" "Nothing, sir. All communication has been cut." Everyone in the room knew what this news meant. President Traoré's simple trip with his 5-person security team to visit water resources in Tambao had now turned into a national crisis. Kabore made a quick decision. "Prepare the rescue units. I want the Special Forces team." "Sir," said an officer hesitantly, "the area is completely under enemy control. A rescue operation. We will not leave our president there." Kabore cut him off. Then, in a lower voice, he added, "Gather the cabinet members, and don't say anything to the press yet." 76 kilometers from where the helicopter had crashed, in a small hut hidden among trees, Ibrahim Traoré was slowly regaining consciousness. The first thing he noticed was pain, the sharp ache in his left shoulder, the blood flowing from his head, and the stabbing he felt in his ribs when he breathed. The second thing he noticed was that his wrists were tightly bound behind him. When he fully opened his eyes, he saw 2 men before him. The first was a thin boy in rags who didn't look older than 16, holding an AK-47. The second was older, perhaps in his 40s, with hard facial features and a strange calmness in his eyes. "The president is waking up," said the younger one, in the Fulani language. The older man approached, examining Traoré. "Do you know me, Ibrahim Traoré?" he asked, speaking in French. Despite the pain, Traoré recognized him. Omar Farouq, the feared leader of JNIM, the man responsible for dozens of attacks in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. 6 months ago, he had sworn before cameras to kill Traoré in revenge for militants who died in operations Traoré had initiated. "I know you, Farouq," said Traoré, trying to keep his voice as steady as possible. Farouq smiled coldly. "An irony that fate loves. We planned for 6 months to capture you alive, and you fall to us from the sky. The others, my team?" asked Traoré. Farouq simply shook his head. "Your pilot was very lucky. He escaped with a broken leg. Your other 2 guards were less fortunate. The rest were lost in the forest fire." Traoré closed his eyes. He tried to erase the faces from his mind. Men who had been loyal to him, who had served alongside him. "What do you want, Farouq?" he finally asked. "Simple. First, a confession before the camera. You will tell how behind all your reform and renewal propaganda, you've been selling out your people. You'll confess to being a puppet of the West. And, second?" asked Traoré, already knowing the answer. "The second is even simpler. In 3 days, millions of people will watch the video, and then they will watch the death of Ibrahim Traoré." These words brought silence to the room. Even the young militant seemed uncomfortable. "Why are we waiting 3 days?" asked the boy, in Fulani. Farouq smiled, his eyes never leaving Traoré. "Because his government will prepare a rescue operation, and we will meet them here. 2 birds, 1 stone. Traoré's mind was racing, trying to assess the hopelessness of his situation. After Burkina Faso's 5 years of stability and progress, everything could be destroyed in just a few hours. If he were killed, the country could plunge into chaos. If a rescue operation failed, more lives would be lost. He was pulled from these thoughts when the door opened. A woman entered, in her 30s with sharp eyes and weariness in them. She carried medical supplies. "I need to treat his wounds," she said to Farouq. "If he catches an infection and dies of fever, you won't have your show." Farouq nodded and left the room, the young guard following him. The woman opened her bag and began examining Traoré's wounds. "Are you a doctor?" asked Traoré. "Once," said the woman briefly, cleaning the blood flowing from the deep cut on his shoulder. "My name is Aisha. Don't talk. Let me work." However, during the cleaning process, she whispered in his ear, "Everyone is listening. Everyone here is afraid of Farouq. But not everyone is loyal to him." Traoré's heart quickened, but he tried to keep his facial expression steady. This could be a trap, or a spark of hope. "Why are you helping me?" he whispered. "Because my son lives in Tambao," said the woman as she bandaged the wound. "He goes to the school you built last year. The water pipe project saved his life." When she finished, she returned to her normal tone. "Your wound isn't deep, but it should be monitored." The door opened and Farouq returned. "Are you finished?" "Yes," said Aisha, "but I'll need to check again in 2 hours. And he needs antibiotics." Farouq nodded and the woman left. Then he turned back to Traoré. "Listen to me, President. In 3 days we will show our rebellion to the world. In 3 days, an era will end. But in the meantime, perhaps there are things you want to tell the world. I'll give you time to think." As Farouq left the room, Traoré felt a spark of hope despite the pain in his wounded shoulder. He had 3 days, 3 days to survive, find a way out, or perhaps do something unexpected, even if it seemed impossible. In Ouagadougou, an emergency cabinet meeting had been convened. News of the president's abduction was still being kept from the public, but whispers were beginning to spread in the corridors. "When will the rescue operation begin?" asked the defense minister. Lieutenant Colonel Caboret pointed to the map. "Special forces are preparing now, but the situation is extremely complex. JNIM could be holding the president in any of 6 camps in the forest. We don't have enough men to check them all." "What about negotiation?" suggested the foreign minister. "Do we know their demands?" "No official demands yet," said Caboret. "But Farouq hasn't been open to negotiation in the past. He never..." His assistant handed him a note. Caboret read it quickly, his face paling. "What is it?" asked the prime minister. "We just received a video," said Caboret. "Farouq, he's showing the president. There's a list of demands." The video was projected on the screen. Traoré, with cuts and bruises on his face, was sitting against a wall. Farouq stood beside him. "I am conveying the demands of our people," said Farouq to the camera. "First, the release of all JNIM members. Second, the withdrawal of all military units from the northern regions. Third, allowing Sharia law to be implemented in these regions. You have 3 days to fulfill these demands, otherwise your president will die." The camera turned to Traoré, who remained cool-headed despite his blood-stained face. He didn't say a single word. "Impossible," said the defense minister when the video ended. "We cannot accept these demands. It would be tearing the country apart." "But what about the president?" someone asked. A heavy silence fell over the room. "We need to accelerate the rescue operation," Caboret finally said. "And we need to find something that will buy us time." In the hut where he was being held captive, Traoré was counting the hours. Aisha had returned and checked his wounds. This time, while changing the bandage, she slipped a small piece of paper into Traoré's hand. When the guards went outside, Traoré opened the paper. "Midnight, be ready." He oscillated between hope and fear. This could be an escape plan, or a trap for something worse, but he had no choice. There was nothing he could do but wait. Hours passed. In the darkness of night, the sounds of the camp gradually diminished. Traoré had tried to loosen the ropes on his wrists, but they were tied too tightly. Still sitting in place, he waited for the door to open. As midnight approached, He heard the sound of a scuffle outside. Shouts, then a gunshot. Then silence. The door opened. Aisha quickly entered, carrying a knife and a flashlight. "We must be quick," she said, cutting the ropes on Traoré's wrists. I drugged one of the guards, the other went to the camp. "What's the plan?" asked Traoré as soon as his hands were free. "There's a path heading north. There's a river 3 kilometers away. A fisherman will be waiting for you there. He'll take you to a safe village." "What about you?" asked Traoré. Aisha's eyes darkened. "I must stay. For my son. If they learn I escaped, they'll find him." Traoré stood up, trying to gather his strength despite being wounded. "What's your son's name?" "Malik," said Aisha. "He's 10 years old. I promise you, Aisha, if I get out of here alive, Malik will be taken care of." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. "Now go. The path is in the back. Head east, then turn north. You'll see the river." Traoré took a step toward the door, then stopped. "Why doesn't Farouq suspect you?" A painful expression crossed Aisha's face. "Because I'm his sister." This revelation surprised Traoré, but there was no time for more questions. He headed for the door, pausing on the threshold to look at Aisha one last time. "Thank you." Outside, the night was filled with the sounds of the forest. Traoré went to the back of the hut and found the indicated path. Despite his aching body, he began to move into the forest. He had only gone a few hundred meters from the camp when he heard footsteps behind him. Someone was following him. Traoré's heart raced. He had no weapon, was injured and weak. But he could run. He increased his pace, moving with difficulty through the dark forest where moonlight barely penetrated. His wounded shoulder hurt with every step, but adrenaline carried him forward. Then suddenly he saw a shadow moving in front of him. Traoré froze. "Mr. President," whispered a voice. Traoré saw dark silhouettes appearing on rooftops and the facade. Red-berated special forces, his own soldiers, a rescue operation. "Don't move," said a voice. "The area is not secure." Traoré's relief was short-lived. At that moment, automatic weapons fire erupted from deep in the forest. The battle had begun. The rescue team quickly took Traoré into protection, but bullets were coming from all directions. The militants must have followed him. "We need to retreat," said the commander. "The plane will be here soon." "No," said Traoré. "Wait." In the midst of battle, a plan was forming in the president's mind. This could be an opportunity to end the fighting, the war, and the suffering. "Declare a ceasefire," Traoré ordered. "And send this message: I want to talk to Farouq." The commander looked on in astonishment. "But Mr. President—" "Now," said Traoré, his voice filled with authority. Soon after, communication was established. The sounds of conflict diminished, and from the darkness of the forest, Farouq emerged, armed men at his side. Opposite them stood Traoré and the rescue team. The two leaders faced each other in the middle of the battlefield. "So far," said Farouq, "instead of 3 days, you lasted only 3 hours." "I didn't escape," said Traoré. "I came to bring you an offer." Farouq frowned suspiciously. "An offer? Our demands were clear." "Your demands are unrealistic and you know it," said Traoré. "But if you want peace, real and lasting peace, we need to sit at the table." Farouq laughed bitterly. "You said the same thing 5 years ago. Unity and peace. But what happened? My people are still poor, still oppressed." "Then change it," said Traoré, taking a step forward. "Come with me to Ouagadougou. Let's declare a ceasefire. Let's put your needs, your concerns on the table. Let's find real sustainable solutions." Farouq looked on with a long silence. "Why should I trust you?" "Because you allowed your sister to save me," said Traoré. "This shows there's still hope inside you." Surprise crossed Farouq's face. "Aisha, it was her?" "Yes," said Traoré. "And she wants a better world for her son Malik, just as she wants for you." Farouq's expression changed. The hardness dissolved. replaced by traces of tears and weariness. Not just peace talk, said Farouq. I want real change, schools, hospitals, development in the northern regions. And we will build them together, said Traoré. Not as enemies, but as brothers. Farouq thought for a long time. Then he put his weapon on the ground. 3 months, he said. I declare a ceasefire for 3 months. If I don't see progress during this time. You will, said Traoré, extending his hand. The two enemies shook hands in the middle of the battlefield. 3 days later, Ibrahim Traoré addressed the nation from the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. Beside him stood Omar Farouq, once his greatest enemy. My fellow citizens, said Traoré, in the past 72 hours our nation has stepped back from the brink, but this crisis has also presented us with a real opportunity. Today, we are signing a 3-month ceasefire agreement with JNIM. During this period, we will work on a comprehensive development and peace plan for our northern regions. As cameras showed the two men who had once sworn to kill each other now standing side by side, the nation was in shock. After years of conflict, Traoré continued, perhaps the solution is not more weapons or more violence. Perhaps the solution is truly listening to each other. Outside the palace, large crowds had gathered. Some watched with skepticism, but most were filled with hope. Perhaps for the first time in years, real peace seemed possible. When alone in his office, Traoré looked at the photograph on his desk, a picture of the guards who had lost their lives in the helicopter crash. Their sacrifice would not be in vain. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. Yes, make arrangements for Malik's custody, he said, and ensure safe passage for his mother. I made a promise and I will keep it. As he hung up the phone, he looked out the window at the horizon of Ouagadougou. The city was now on the brink of peace, but the road would be long and difficult. But Ibrahim Traoré had learned that even in the darkest times there is a path of hope. The 72 hours he survived in the forest had taught him the most valuable lesson. Sometimes facing our enemies is more courageous than running from them. And true, leadership is not winning the war but building peace.